Thank you first for the invitation to be with you today, as well as for the privilege of being one of the knowledge partners for this great event. And congratulations for pulling it off in this part of the world where I think the evolution of thinking is actually a shining example for the rest of the world to follow. At PwC, or PricewaterhouseCoopers, we have the ability to operate in over 160 countries around the world and see the many trends that are ongoing. But let's go back to the term that was coined by the World Economic Forum 2 years ago of the fourth industrial revolution. And what are the key elements of that revolution? And how do they then apply to business, to governments, to society at large? Clearly, the combination of aggregations of massive amounts of data is something we've never seen before. And the massive amount of data is going to continue to increase when you look at the tremendous growth in data gathering techniques, be it sensors that are in various commercial and industrial products, embedded within retail and consumer apparel, or in drones and other techniques to gather data in a structured and an unstructured way. You combine that with the tremendous computing storage and capabilities that they have to actually accelerate the learning and the analysis that's necessary to make better and faster decisions. Decisions that increase the efficiency of governments, the experiences of the citizens of countries, and the performance of business all in. But as you step back and think about those trends, bringing them all together is what the fourth industrial revolution was all about, which was the interconnectedness all of this. Now, as you step back and think through what this means, first we see a blending of sectors. We've talked about this over the last 2 days already. When you think about a manufacturing organization connecting with a services organization, when you look at a financial services company interacting with a healthcare company, when you see a retail consumer actually blending itself into a healthcare company. You also see another trend, which is actually the shortening of the distance between a manufacturer and a services organization, or the distance between that ultimate apparel company and the production and the supply chains that happens in various parts of the world. And these are the trends that are challenging CEOs on a worldwide basis, government officials around the world, including this region, as you think about what should be done to be more successful or what needs to be done to accelerate the changes for scalability and adoptability. About 4 or 5 days ago, we announced within our Strategy and Business magazine 10 founding principles that are important to either enable better success or accelerate the change that should happen in terms of scaling up use and adoptability to bring this future to the realities of today. Because I would argue, just as we heard from the founder and CEO of Careem, that the future that we are talking about is in fact here today. The only question that's on the table is how to enhance the scalability and the pace of adoptability to bring the benefits to scale in an immediate, successful way in the eyes of the users. While there are 10 principles, I thought it would be important to talk about 4 of them today because I think they're foundational for everything that gets done in the developed or an emerging economy, for what gets done by a business organization or government, or in fact how communities, countries need to think about what they are looking to achieve when planning out, for example, the future that was described earlier this morning, when the RTA described what that future is going to look like by the time we get to 2030. So let's start with those 4 principles. First and foremost, enhance your technology acumen or your digital IQ. The world today, business today, governments today, are limited only by what they don't know. A lot of the things that are happening around the world, candidly, are not top of mind for people in terms of, is it real or is it fantasy? And the more I can understand better the implications of technology, the new ideas and applications, the new applications in the eyes of a consumer, the better off I am in designing the world of possibilities and shortening the life cycle between R&D and reality. But in order to think about digital or technology acumen, historically organizations, governments, and even the communities we live in, think about the fact that I've got to bring more people in that have coding capabilities, computer science capabilities, the ability to write that algorithm, to bring together a unique platform for a consumer that might want to put it on its mobile device. And the reality is, organizations on a worldwide basis, countries, have to actually increase the acumen of all of its people. It could go to the marketing organization in terms of how to leverage differently digital social media skills. It can go to the finance organization and thinking about cloud technologies and the implications to the benefits of scale and usability. It can go to the design engineers in terms of how to think about this unique technology that can be brought in to an R&D cycle and ultimately bring it to the 3D printer in a shorter scale basis to bring that reality closer to the end consumer. And if we're not able to bring technology acumen up to a higher level, we'll be limited by then the possibilities that are out there. There's a second piece when we talk about technology acumen or digital IQ. And this is actually to enhance the digital IQ of our stakeholders. There's no way in the world that what was depicted this morning in the video can be designed without increasing user acceptability. And therefore, how do you actually think about the technology acumen or digital IQ of the consumer is equally as important as enhancing the digital IQ of your own organizations or governments, or the ministries that we may have in this part of the world. And the onus is on the leadership teams to bring that to life. We see examples time and time again where you're bringing in great IQ or research and development from the academics, but what is more important is actually bringing to life the practical applications from them. Now, in order to do that, it gets to the second major theme, which is everything has to be designed with the customer in mind. But it also has to be planned for increased adoptability. What you heard in the previous conversation, Kareem, is solving it from a client's perspective, the customer, the user of that car, be it the women in Saudi or people here in this part of the region where they're looking for a much unique or differentiated experience. And it has to start with not the product you are offering or necessarily the service that can be provided, but rather what is the problem we are trying to solve from a customer's perspective, a consumer's perspective, and give them an experience that allows for differentiation and ultimately allows for a company or an organization to actually gain market share on a sustained basis rather than being a fad, which is a big risk today when you think about technology platforms and applications in terms of moving from one app to another in a way that actually is no longer sustainable. So designing things from a customer perspective is uniquely and very important in terms of what gets done. But also as important is designing it for the adaptability. Today, if you're thinking about using an organization like Kareem and thinking through mobility and transportation, the adoptability by a 21-year-old is a lot different than the adoptability for the 65-year-old. The willingness to get into that pod differs by age, experience, and the beliefs that individuals have. So it is not only important for organizations and governments to think about the consumer experience, but rather how can we enhance the segmentation of the consumer and figure out how do we increase the adoptability of that. Think about a bank today. A bank today in many parts of the world are using digital devices, mobile devices to actually think about various aspects of your banking needs. It's very easy for a 25-year-old or a 35-year-old to perhaps use that mobile device, the phone or the app that they might have, to actually allow for the avoidance of even going to a branch. What banks have not done as much is yet educate the 50, 60, 70-year-old in terms of the ease of access, the benefit for them personally, and therefore their increased digital IQ for them to use the techniques and the service offerings that these financial institutions have invested so heavily in. And investment only comes to life if, in fact, you can scale up as quickly as you possibly can. Which gets to the third point. How do you relook and rethink your entire business model? Business models today focus on traditionally 3 different elements. First, they focus on where's the R&D and how can I get that close to the consumer. Second, how can I actually make sure that whatever I've designed can be manufactured in a way that's usable in such a way that maximizes the potential of the supply chain, shortens the cycle from when I need either the parts or the service to make it come to life, and assure its sustainability. And last, it has to think about its pricing mechanisms. How will I price today for that product or that service in a way that is much different than before? And as we think about the Industrial Revolution 4.0, or the concepts of manufacturing and what has to happen with industries, the questions that are on the table are, is that organization really ready for the change to move off a pricing mechanism for a product rather than an online subscription service for continuous data to shorten supply chains or perhaps the service cycle when a product goes bad? Is your organization actually fit for purpose with that in mind? If you've historically had a number of engineers to come up with product, do you now have the people necessary to actually sell subscription-based models and maintain them over time? So as you step back and think about a strategy that is action-oriented and pragmatic, you have to think about a strategy that works for not only today, but also for what you're moving to be tomorrow. In a recent book that we put out as part of our research, Strategy That Works, we focus on 3 or 4 major things that business models have to do differently than they ever did before. They have to be ruthless on what is the capability that gives them differentiated advantage in the marketplace. You heard today, in terms of the Kareem organization, of the benefit that they have versus an Uber, versus a Lyft, or even for that matter, what a Google doesn't have that they then do. Investing in that capability is hugely important. So much so that it's got to be top of mind for either the business leadership team and its board, or in a government, how in fact can we enhance the distinguished capabilities that the government has as it interacts with its people in its country. And you have to be ruthless because capital is not endless, time is not endless, to be ruthless in terms of what I will choose not to do anymore and redeploy that capital, financial or time, into those differentiated capabilities for tomorrow. And as you think about this, it goes to both your business model, where people reside. Do they reside on your own balance sheets? Are they in country? Are they virtual? It goes to how will you price that differentiated capability, not maybe perhaps product offering. And it goes to now, is your organization fit for what your growth opportunities are for the future? And as you look at the business models that are successful, our own survey here in the Middle East, as we thought about manufacturing 4.0, a deviation coming off of the 4th Industrial Revolution, we see huge potential. We see 3 to 4 percentage points in revenue enhancement for those that are moving in a digital interconnected way. We see up to 4 percentage points of efficiency gains for those that are actually taking these concepts into consideration as they think about a refined business model and the actions that they need to think about differently, resulting in tens of billions of dollars of either savings or enhanced revenue, and billions and billions of dollars of needed investment that enable then economic growth and the like. Now, what's important as you think through that change in business model is the implications from it, and it gets to my 4th point. My 4th and final point is, how do you bring humanity back into the digital world? The reality is, Every time we have gone through an evolution or revolution, as the World Economic Forum has talked about the last three, there has also been an implication of the humanity and the implications to it that has come to life. And I want to hit 3 or 4 of these for people to be sensitive to as we think about the world that we're now living in. First is for your own employees, either in a business or a government or ministry. The reality is bringing in technology advancements does have then the aspect of what are the implications to my existing workforce? How will they interact with the robotics? How will they interact with artificial intelligence? How will they react with the removal of mundane tasks that they have historically done? And will they see that as a threat or an opportunity to collaborate more with artificial intelligence, machine learning, and enhanced visualization of that? Creating the right environment for success and collaboration is a responsibility of leadership to make that combination come to life. And this will be more difficult as you look ahead. The second element of the humanic exercise is then for your stakeholders, your consumers, your investors, your business partners, and the long supply chains that now has become much more integrated than ever before. And how do you think about the interventions between those organizations? At PwC, when we've done our annual CEO survey, it is clear that organizations will not be able to survive and sustain themselves without more M&A, increasing amount of new talent, new skill sets, as well as alliances to bring this all together. It will require a different way of thinking for the leadership teams, again, of governments, business, and ministries, to allow for this new way of thinking to become a reality. Because standing still in a status quo basis or trying to change your old workforce will never get you to the new world that we just envisioned in the last 2 conversations. The third piece of humanity is to think about the implications to society. This is where the developed world is struggling quite a bit. While we can talk about the fact that when you look at the nationalistic or protection issues that are coming out of the US or the UK, the reality is it's not necessarily trade that is causing those challenges in terms of various people in various communities being disaffected. It is in fact the implications to robotics and automation that has removed their jobs. So how we think about an interconnected world is very important in terms of the give back to society, the implications on education, and the opportunities for people to be successful on a sustained basis. And baking this into the thinking is critical to any organization's success, because if they're going to focus solely on artificial intelligence, robotic, automation, and interconnection in the manufacturing cycle and leave out the human element, they will fail. They will absolutely fail. I go back to an example probably 4 years ago where a CEO of a retail consumer company talked about the fact that when they had a problem with a product, at that time it was very easy for them to solve the problem on a singular basis. Today, someone picks up their device, they take a picture, they send a snapshot, it goes around the world, it gets 10 million hits, and it has a 5, 10, 15% implication on market cap because of a disgruntled consumer that today has mass influence because of the interconnected world that we live in. If we're not bringing that humanic aspect into what we are doing relevant to disruption, we'll lose the opportunities for the benefits that we all talked about, which is the happiness factor that we look for in this part of the world. These 4 important elements, digital IQ and the enhancement of that, not only for your own employees, but also your own stakeholders, keeping the client or consumer at the center of everything while planning for increased scalability and adoptability, changing your business models, and bringing humanity into the organizations as you go through this journey are critical for anybody's success. You can see the other principles within our website, but what I would say to you today is that this world that has been described, that we see outside in the booths, that we see inside in this room in the videos, is here today. It is a reality that none of us can actually forsake. But in order for us to be successful in it, these operating principles have to be adopted more so each and every day. And it requires both the leaders and the organizations to adopt and champion these causes to enable the success for the future. Thank you very much for the time today. Good luck with the rest of the conference, and enjoy yourselves.